So this is a little bit New York centric, but this actually, in my view, has really big implications for the rest of the country because I feel like every day on this show, we're kind of talking about the failure of democratic leadership in some respects and the failure at a time when progressive politics, progressive ideas should be ascendant and arguably are ascendant in terms of their intellectual and policy currency, but are still not being implemented, still not being acted on. It shows that there's a certain failure of leadership here and a failure of imagination in the Democratic Party and in the kind of vehicles that are supposed to represent progressive politics. So Anthony Weiner, who probably most people outside of New York know for two things. I mean, they know him definitely for one thing. They know him as being the Twitter picture dude.
You can say it because this is a looser show. He sent a dick pic on Twitter.
He sent many dick pics on picture.
Many dick pics on
Twitter. And even more embarrassingly, he also just sent like these, even like just dumb, like kind of like dirty back and forth messages on Twitter. He embarrassed himself. He made a complete ass of himself. He had a sex scandal that forced him out of office without ever even having sex.
Yes.
I mean, that's really the kind
in fact, even further, he never even interacted with these women in real life off the internet.
As far as we know,
yes.
As far as we know.
And I think it would have come out by now.
Well, who knows what will come out now. And as we all know, he has a very beautiful and elegant wife, and it's just kind of depressing. But the other thing that you might know about Anthony Weiner was that starting in around 2009, 2010, he blew up as a kind of progressive media sensation because unlike so many others in the Democratic Party, he was a great and articulate and relentless advocate on television for particularly single-payer universal health care and other really important
one very
policies.
Specific thing most people probably remember him for, and Jon Stewart and The Daily Show made him sort of famous for this, was his speech on the floor where he completely eviscerated Republicans for voting against the 9/11 healthcare package.
Exactly, which was that they were actually holding up a bill which would deliver healthcare to 9/11 first responders. So he did some great stuff like that. And a lot of people, I think, frankly, because we're just so desperate in progressive politics for people who can actually advocate, politicians who can advocate clearly and forcefully for someone to do that there was a lot of positive reception for him. Now, now Anthony Weiner is reemerging within the last week, and he's going to run for mayor of New
After
York
being
City.
completely off not even in the sphere.
Totally off the radar for a couple of years. Now he's back. He has a mea culpa interview on New York Times Magazine with his wife, and he has a Twitter account up. And look, his policy agenda for New York City is very progressive. But this is where we run into the problem with Anthony Weiner. Is that
he's running for mayor, which everyone knows he was going to do from before the dick pics came out.
Well, he ran for mayor before in 2005.
Well, yeah, but we all knew, everyone knew he had this gigantic campaign treasure chest where he was waiting for this moment to run.
Well, the key thing is actually that Anthony Weiner has several $1 million in his campaign war chest, which he will have to give back.
I called it treasure chest.
His campaign treasure chest. Which he'll have
Pirate Anthony Weiner.
He'll have to give back if he doesn't take the plunge into this race. Which brings us to the problem with Anthony Weiner, which is that Anthony Weiner kind of sucks. And it's a problem that this guy is going to be potentially because, we'll get into this more later when we go through the rest of the field. But the notion of him as the progressive standard bearer in this race, I don't want to exclude it completely because he's put out some great ideas. He has some talent. But it's really problematic. So let's just go over some of points here in Anthony Weiner's record, besides, of course, his dick pics, of which there are probably more. Okay, so I'm going to take this from the beginning, reaching back into his career. When he ran for mayor in 2005, he ran as a kind of Ed Koch candidate. Which really in New York terms, that means appealing to the outer boroughs and the middle class, which is in some ways a good thing, but it's hardly progressive. It's very brutal on law and order issues, which obviously has a certain appeal in parts of New York, and arguably in some ways has served a certain purpose in making the city a bit more safer, but has gotten completely out of control.
When a lot of people think of, New York City, they think of Manhattan and
That's
being
right.
like a liberal bastion, if you will. But when you get to the outer boroughs, it really, Staten Island is extremely right wing in many ways. In fact, I believe most of their local representatives are Republican. Parts of Queens, parts of Brooklyn, parts of the Bronx, all right wing Republican areas.
Absolutely. And Weiner was trying to kind of build that type of outer borough white ethnic coalition, and that's his congressional district that he represented in Queens. That's where he comes from. There's a couple of other aspects to that. One, which look, do you deal with foreign policy as mayor of New York? Well, not necessarily, although we've seen with the New York City spying scandal with the NYPD working and monitoring Muslim communities in the city and even in other states, in fact, that obviously how you look at the world and your foreign policy views have an impact. Now, Anthony Weiner, when he was in Congress, voted for the invasion of Iraq and was an almost ludicrously comical supporter of absolutely anything Israel did at any time. Which have many people who with some intelligence about this issue have pointed out, if you're a real genuine supporter of Israel at this point, you had better be criticizing all sorts of things that the Israeli government is doing to threaten its demographics in the long term, to threaten its standing in the international community. But if you needed someone to say in any situation at any time ever that Israel was great and whatever it did was always right, no matter how bad, Anthony Weiner's your guy. Now, again, I think this is relevant because you're talking about, governing a global city, a city that's already gotten into serious trouble with monitoring the Muslim community and civil liberties questions around that. So that's an important thing to think about Anthony Weiner. Now, the other thing moving forward and what he said, because again, as I've said, most of his policy proposals coming out of the gate have been very progressive. He's talked about having single-payer health care for New York City. He's talked about getting rid of child hunger in the city. That's great. But he has actually said that he would not now in New York, again, this is another important police policy. There's a policy of stop and frisk that Bloomberg is strongly implemented.
We've talked about it on
we've talked about this
Sam
on the air,
Cedars Majority
on
Report.
Sam Cedars Majority Report numerous times. Basically, it's police without any type of probable cause. Basically, it's essentially formalized profiling of certain communities. It's young Black and Hispanic men getting pulled over on the street, getting searched, and
they can search you for the simple fact of, to them you look suspicious.
To them, you look suspicious.
You don't have to necessarily do anything. If they're driving by and they think, and it's different for each individual cop, obviously, if they think you look suspicious, hands up against the wall, and they will frisk you.
And also in New York, there's videos released regularly of just there's some videos that are worse than others in terms of actual physical abuse, but there's also just constant videos of cops berating teenagers doing absolutely nothing and getting berated and harassed and all the rest. So it's a really problematic policy, to say the least, and it's kind of the opposition to it in the city has really grown over the last couple of years. And all mayoral candidates, including Christine Quinn, who's the Democratic Leadership Council mainstream Bloomberg Democrat, has made some moves against it. Weiner said in one of his first TV interviews when he talked since announcing this mayoral exploratory committee, he said, "I don't think it's smart to stop from police from having the ability to do that," speaking in regard to stop and frisk. Now, he added a bunch of caveats to it, but right out of the gate, the progressive candidate is saying that stop and frisk is a tool that police should have. Now, there's all sorts of other things with Weiner. Apparently, he was a nightmare to work with. He was terrible to his staff, which matters if your job is mayor, because a big part of being mayor is managing people.
Jeez, if he was sending his dick pics to people he didn't know, imagine what those poor staffers were going through. Maybe he was running around the office with it just hanging right out.
I think he was sending dick pics to let go of the stress from terrorizing his office to get more press bookings. But I think the thing is with Anthony Weiner, it's like, look, the bigger thing here is this guy who's like known as this sort of seminal progressive voice, and we've just identified several things about him that are incredibly disturbing and wrong on the merits and wrong on policy, not to mention the fact that probably more pictures that he sent out over Twitter will come out in the next couple of weeks. So I just think that it's so frustrating with Anthony Weiner because it's like, it's so rare to find an Elizabeth Warren or someone who they have progressive politics, they govern in a progressive way, and they're serious about doing the work that they're meant to do. That type of policy agenda has so much opportunity right now, and yet there are so few people that are willing to represent it. And I got to tell you, so anyways, I would not trust Anthony Weiner. We'll wait and see attitude, see what happens, but be very skeptical. And I think the fact that he's gotten so popular based off of being a good TV pundit, not being a good congressman.
Yes, exactly. It's all for show.
It's all for show, and that's fine. Like, that's what we're doing to it, right? Like, that's not a problem. But the fact is,
I wouldn't say that's what we're doing.
We're not doing a little bit of, like, commentary and punditry?
We definitely do, but I mean, we do believe what we're saying. We're not just...
Oh, absolutely. Well, I'm not even saying... I mean, look, even if Anthony Weiner totally believes what he's saying, he doesn't have a congressional, record.
And also,
to back that up.
We are also not out there saying these things and then going ahead and making votes that matter to people's lives.
Well, and we're also not in Congress, where presumably a main part of our job would be being legislative.
I got what you were saying, but
anyway,
it was sort of the same, but it's not exactly. Not by a long stretch. Yes.
Yeah. I was saying the right thing. You were saying the non sequitur thing.
Let's end it there and continue. But what you're saying is right. I mean, if you want someone running against Christine Quinn as the progressive candidate, you want someone who's going to be strong, who people are going to be able to say, you know what? Let's take a look at this guy or girl.
Yes.
Let's take a look and see, you know what? This person is giving us something that's meaningful that could actually beat Christine Quinn. Let's rally behind this person.
And on top
of
that,
you got this person who's now in the forefront, right behind Christine Quinn, basically. He not only has this record, but B, he has this past with these pictures, and I mean, like you said, there's more than one. I'm sure they haven't all come out. And I mean, we're going to run a progressive candidate who is A, not really a true progressive, and B, will most likely lose to Christine Quinn anyway because of this past that will likely come out during this campaign.
And again, that we are so starved for leadership that a guy, and I don't want to minimize it, he was great on TV, and it was really fun watching him beat Bill O'Reilly in a debate. And he did, and I don't think he's like secretly right-wing or whatever. I think he is essentially what he shows himself. He's very right-wing on foreign policy views and so on, whatever. But the point is that how easy it was to get progressive credit and respect just for doing those TV appearances shows the just complete poverty of progressive leadership in America. And that's what I think, Anthony Weiner points to a bigger problem way beyond him.
I mean, it's funny you say that because if you think about it, like, on the progressive end of things, like you just mentioned, if Weiner was running for the House or something, where he was the most progressive candidate because he was running against some right-wing Republican,
right?
Then I would be forced to put my chips behind him and hope that he wins.
Of course.
But we're in a race right now where everyone running is a Democrat, who has a chance of winning at least, is a Democrat, and it's basically from right-wing center, I guess if you want to call it Democrat, to true progressives. And you have someone who like Anthony Weiner, who's going to hurt someone like Bill de Blasio's chances of winning.
Bill de Blasio's like the genuine kind of progressive left-wing candidate, and he's not getting any traction, which is kind of actually
his fault for running a bad campaign so far.
And that's so far, he's still the guy I'm supporting. But
Same here.
But I think that's interesting, though, because that's kind of the flip side. Then you do have a guy like de Blasio who's been there's a position called public advocate in New York City, and he's got a very genuinely progressive record. He's running a really, on good issues. But his campaign, it's a topic for another day. It's just functionally incompetent so far. So that's the other flip side. Then you get a guy who really is this pretty desirable candidate. What New York really needs, doesn't have weird skeletons in his closet as far as we know, and yet just can't get it together.
Maybe it goes to show you just how long it's been since many true progressives have been involved in politics in terms of being an elected official. I mean, it seems like this seems to be the case with a lot of these true progressive candidates where their staff members who are true progressives who support them just don't have the experience these center right or right wing staff members have in the system.
I don't know. I mean, it could be. I think that, I do think that in the coming decades, you'll see more people of a kind of Elizabeth Warren profile running, and that would be a really good thing. But I think in the short term, it's just frustrating to watch the Anthony Weiner thing because he's so problematic on so many different areas, and yet has gotten this huge currency for himself.